think one of the things you said when I was watching, the Lost Century, right? And at the end, you said you wanted to build a facility that's going to be open source 24/7. You're working on stuff, and there's cameras for other people to see on whatever you're building, right? This whole concept of open source probably became more mainstream when Elon started talking about all our stuff is open source. Open source is a phrase that's been around for a long time, but he just kind of took it to a whole different level with, a few 100 million followers. I'm like, oh, what is open source? Let me look into this. So walk me through why, your idea of open source and how that would protect both everyone, why that's a good idea, is it going to get others to look and see, well, what if we can do it better? And what if we can do it better? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, see, that's the beauty of like crowdsourcing information. So let's say you're working on a system and you get stuck because you're having a problem rectifying the electromagnetic frequencies or whatever. If it's open source and it's streamed, you have scientists all over the world, there would be a specialist in there that could pipe in and say, well, try this, right? So you collapse timeframes. Secondly, and this is more important, if you do it secretively, the minute you get that eureka moment, the door is going to get kicked in, the device is going to get confiscated, and you're going to get a national security order on it, or you may get killed. Whereas if it's being streamed and the old saying, the whole world's watching, that can't happen. And the other is that it can't be black-shelved. If a corporation does it, I know people who become very wealthy by having an invention like that, and they say, well, hey, what's your price? Here's $50 million, go buy a Lamborghini. And,
they sold this.
And they sold, and that corporation puts it on a black shelf.
Right.
And it never is seen. Or the patent office. In our archive, you'll see an interview.
Shell did it, right? Shell bought one of the guys for $25 million, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, happens all the time.
Right.
I've been, since 1991, I've been dealing with inventors that keep having that happen. The other is that if you go the patent route, there is a provision in the patent laws related to this Secrecy Act you talked about. And if you look at the interview we had with Dr. Paul Vallone, who is a physicist who was in the patent office, he blew the whistle that they were doing this. And that we have that. We have that interview with him. He ended up suing the patent office because he was terminated and fired and won a settlement, so he won't talk about it now.
You said Vallone, Paul Vallone?
Yeah.
How do you spell Vallone?
Vallone.
Got it.
Dr. Paul Vallone.
Yeah.
He's a PhD physicist. So, we have all that information. So what I've tried to do is say, over the last 100 years, how has this gone sideways when people have got these discoveries? And so the idea of doing this live on the internet, streamed, backed up, multi-centered, but also where there's no intellectual property or patent attached to it. It's basically you're squeezing the toothpaste out of the tube so fast no one can put it back in, and that I don't think would be so easily frustrated as say someone doing a stand-up, a startup company, and they're doing it secretively, and it's like the next iPhone, we're going to keep it under wraps. That's how you end up dead or getting confiscated. And one of the things that I've found is people don't learn from history. Like if you study this history of these sort of incredible technologies and inventions, you'll see a certain number of patterns. And one of them is this, that people who try to do it, even with the best intentions, but are trying to monetize it at the front end and keep it a secret or a patent or a special sauce, it never gets out to the public, and they never end up getting anything for it unless they take a bribe.
Who was the guy you spoke to, the fellow where you said, look, I'm telling you, make it open source, leak it to everybody. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm pretending. Then boom, he was killed. Who was the guy? You talked about somebody on the Lost Century.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure in that film. There are several people that have had that happen. It's a tragedy.
Was it Thomas Moray or no, not Moray? It was one of the ones you had a conversation with.
I have to look at that. I've dealt with hundreds of these inventors over the years.
Who don't want to give it up, who don't want to make it open
They make the same mistake over and over and over and over. Well, actually, one of the groups was, the guys who bought all the Stan Meyer. He had a car that was running on water, and that was real back in the 90s, I believe. And but he also, what everyone didn't know, he had a toroidal, a donut-shaped electromagnetic device. Yep. And you'll see a picture of this thing because we were going to try to get that collection because he had died. Everyone thinks he was poisoned. We don't know, but he dropped dead suddenly. But there was a group that had a lot of funding from an offshore source who I know now, but we didn't know who they were. And they got all that material and they were studying it, basically reverse engineering Stan Meyer's inventions, including this electromagnetic, it was like a donut-shaped object that was free energy. And it had a national security order on it from way back then, I think from the 80s. And when they got it operational, they were sabotaged. There were death threats. So I got a call from their big funder, Lord so-and-so, I'm not going to say it on the air because I've kept this confidential, who was providing all the money. And I said, well, I told them, if you do this secretly, when you hit that eureka moment, it works, you're going to run into the mother of all buzzsaws. And they did. And he says, well, what should I do? I said, you need to have them open source this, dump it on the internet immediately into me, and I'll see that it gets to millions of people. They wouldn't do it. They still thought they could keep it secret. They were going to go to another country. I said, dude, you're going to have to go to another damn planet, right, to protect yourself. So and the next thing I heard, I think it was more than a dozen of them were killed. And all that everything vanished. And that wasn't that long ago. That was just a few years ago. And, you know, I've seen this happen too often. So everyone who gets dollar signs in their eyes, I'm going to be the next Rockefeller of energy. Yeah, well, here's what's going to happen. Before that occurs, Murder Incorporated is going to kick your door in and kick your ass. Or, you know, they'll offer to buy you out. But you're not going to benefit humanity or the earth. I think it's sort of like when the DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, started the internet. It was them, not Al Gore. And Al Gore claimed he invented the internet. It's funny. But the truth is, DARPA, it's open source, and it spun off thousands of companies, including some that are trillion-dollar companies. I think that if a group did this as angel funders, they would be able to get it out there, and it would spawn a whole new economy. Imagine what could happen in Africa, and South America, and India, impoverished areas. You would have such a huge uplift in humanity and the economy. Now, as that goes up, there are going to be some people who will go the other way, just like Braille typewriters didn't adapt to the internet age and computers, and so they went the way of all flesh. If you made horse carriages and you didn't adapt to the automobile, you went bankrupt. So, you know, at a certain point, that's just the way technology has to evolve. So the secrecy around all this, it's time for it to end. And that's how it's going to happen. It isn't going to happen.
Open source model. So you have to be willing to do it for civilization and your kids and family and others instead of your pocketbook.
Yeah, but on the second order, now let's remember, if you did it open source, it doesn't mean you can't then productize it, create products secondarily. Now, there'll be a lot of people doing that, but it's like the first Xerox machine was still the first Xerox machine, even if it eventually got copied and imitated. And let's not forget, in this climate globally, I don't care if you patent it or keep it secret. The first thing that's going to happen is in China and other countries, they're going to study it, reverse engineer it, come out with generation 2, and they're not going to care about your patent or your intellectual property.
Even in America, that we just saw what happened with the FTC non-compete laws. They just changed right now. That's getting effect in August that they're doing that.
Right.
Okay.
That's just a given.
Yeah.
So I tell people about this, you need to be smart about it, because if you don't learn from history, you're going to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And that's, as I say, it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So I think this is a fresh approach. It's controversial because most people I've met of high net worth, they want to keep it secret. They want to monetize it. It's like, dude, you've already got $1 billion. Do you care? I mean, at a certain point, I'm a retired doctor. I'm comfortable, but I can't fund something like that. But I'm always astonished at how myopic a lot of folks are about this.
Have you ever had a meeting with Elon Musk or not? Have you guys ever had a conversation?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know him personally.
Interesting. Yeah.
I have a friend who does. But
You've never been on Tucker? You guys have never had any conversations?
No, I think he reached out. It just hasn't happened. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, hook us up. I mean, I think he's been on the right path on some things on this issue, and then I think he got gaslit and diverted. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I think his level of curiosity and willingness to seek the truth and challenge the status quo and have the I don't give a attitude is going to both get him in trouble as well as get us closer to the truth.
Yes.
And I think that's a very honorable position to be in, risky, because you risk not being liked and hated and, defame and defamation, all this other stuff that comes with it. But
hey, I've had it. But the other thing is, I said this earlier, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing with this issue, because I think out in the public, there's 9 parts disinformation and fake stuff, and maybe 1 part real. And so, I mean, the reason the chief folks for the Senate Intelligence Committee have asked me to come in is because they know that I actually have information. And so I think journalists like Mr. Carlson or others need to, if they're really going to look into this, need to look into it properly and avail themselves of experts. And I always tell people, not me so much as what we've collected. But I can articulate that. But I just think it's very important for people to understand this is not like anything else. If you take for the top secret document from Canada from 1950, one of the things it said, black and white, this issue is the most secret subject in the entire U.S. government, exceeding the secrecy of the detonation of the first hydrogen bomb when they were working on the hydrogen bomb. That was 1950, 52, we detonated it. Imagine anything more secret than the ultimate doomsday weapon. And what kind of counterintelligence and disinformation has been pushed out to the public to gaslight people and divert them. So I think people have to take that document seriously and say, well, what has been done?
Yeah.
And that's been my huge challenge, is to sift the truth from the fiction to the best I can.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.